Guys, welcome back to the Desert Road. We're so excited to have you here for this review, full walk around and a drive of this 2022 Lucid Air Grand Touring. This is not their entry level car. This is the mid-tier one. It might have been the highest level in 2022. This is one of the first cars to come off their production line. I'm very excited to get my hands on one. I've read and seen and watched a lot of good things said about this car. So we're gonna debunk, is it all true? Is this car all it's hyped up to be? This is a big Tesla rival. It's a great Model S alternative. We're gonna take it on a drive, take it on a walk around, and just really see if it lives up to all the hype, especially for the money. New, this car was $140,000. That is quite a bit of money, and you have a lot of options, other options to consider in this price class. For electric cars, maybe not as much. This is one of the most expensive electric cars made and still made today. So I'm very, very excited to give you my full opinion. I've had this for a week. I've gotten my hands on this to be able to drive this, take it around on the freeway, around town with kids, as family life. I'll give you my full and honest opinion about this car. So first, let's not waste too much time, get straight into it. We're gonna do a brief walk around, check out the interior, and then obviously take it on a drive to see exactly what it drives like. Guys, before we jump into the review, if you'd like to learn how to buy, drive, and sell cars just like this without losing tons of money out of your pocket, we can teach you exactly how to do that. TheRuleOfCars.com. Click the link below. Starting off, you can see it's finished in this beautiful white. It's got the silver roof right here, just the Air being basically the only shape and car that they make so far. Again, this is one of the first cars that they made to come off the assembly line. The company was recently started up, and for a first product, you kind of see what you're getting right here. We're gonna do a walk around, nice 21-inch wheels. You can see we got some LEDs, just nice, very clean, very modern design, very aerodynamic. You can see it has some similarities perhaps to a Tesla, but it put its own spin on it. It's almost like it's like a sporty yet luxury looking ride. I don't have any gripes with the way this car looks. Beautiful LED that lights up here at night. The Lucid logo here lights up too. You got the lights, the LED lights just integrated right into there. Just very sleek, very modern. This car definitely looks up to date on 2024. So a lot of people obviously don't know what a Lucid is. They don't advertise much. There's not many of these out there yet, but here we are, and we get to look and review this beautiful automobile. Overall, it's finished pretty well. Build quality, without nitpicking on the outside here, I don't see too many flaws. Honestly, all the gap panels look about even. Nothing seems to be rattly or shaky from my point of view. Just really nothing to have a gripe on from the exterior of the car. We can walk around here. We'll talk a little bit about the interior in a second. Again, due to the inherent nature of the larger back seat they give you, they kind of cut out on some of the trunk space and the way this car slopes and opens the trunk from the back. As you can see, again, very simple back here. We got the Lucid logo, we got the Air, the Grand Touring little badge right here. It's not overly obvious if this is the entry level car or the higher up tier one. That is one thing that I would probably change a little bit. You'd probably want people to know that you paid, you know, close to 150 grand for this versus some of their entry-level cars where you can probably pick this up for 80 to 90K. So I'd want a little bit more distinction. Let's open this trunk up, see what this looks like. My biggest gripe, especially with a family, is just how you can't just kind of set things in there. You got to push things in there. Even with groceries, you kind of got to duck them below here. If you have strollers, if you're taking this around, I mean, it's almost like this will make your life definitely a little bit harder. You have a little bit of extra space here. I suppose you can always pull this out and kind of store things down here. That's always an option for you as well. So you do have a little bit more floor space. I guess you can set things down in there. So that's something. Luggage wise, you should be able to fit a couple big luggages or a duffel bag, a small luggage with a big luggage. So it has the space. It's just used a little bit differently than typical. We're gonna come around here. Let's look at the front, see the space you have up front. I got to point out the charging door is right up front here on the left side. It opens through a button here. All right, opening up the front, again, you have some space. Definitely could store a couple things in here. If you wanted to load up the groceries and such in here, you can definitely do that, removing this panel cover right here. So not too bad overall. Okay, there's actually a button to close this up. We're gonna hit that. It does come down rather fast, so watch your hand when you do that. That's that. Nice exterior. Let's jump inside, go over some of the materials, some of the build quality issues, and then take it on a drive. So we're actually gonna start off the interior looking at this back seat. For a couple passengers, especially more grown ones, this is an awesome, awesome space. This gives you so much legroom back here. But the con comes when you have kids either forward or rear facing, the space becomes almost kind of very tight. You have this roof that really slopes down, and with these seats pushed further back, it's a real pain in the butt loading them up here. As you can see, not only do you gotta dug down under this right here, it's very, very difficult to kind of pull them in and pull them out of the seat. So if you plan on using this with little kids, just know you're gonna have definitely a little bit of a struggle versus SUV or something a little bit more traditional. With older kids, with older adults, this is definitely a perfect space to be. You have quite a bit of space here. You see that you have the glass roof here on top, so it gives you a little bit of extra headroom as well. But with little kids, again, this is something to consider, that this might not be the most ideal situation. You have the window shades back here. You have a power retractable window shade even for the back window if you want to do something like that. Plenty of air vents back here, so rear passengers get more than enough air. This car cools down very, very well. With that said, let's jump up front and start dissecting the ins and outs of that interior. All right, guys, jumping in. Oh man, so much to say. Where do we begin? First of all, you start glancing in here, you notice just how many materials they mixed and matched. You have the leather, you have the suede, you have this wool type fabric, you have the wool in here, you have the aluminum. I mean, between all this, they do, to me, I really like this combination. It's just mix and match a whole bunch of really cool ingredients in here that somehow all come together well. Very similar shade of all colors. It's put together well. Some people might think they kind of use the parts bin special to throw this together. To me, this is a nice touch, and they definitely stand out in a class, especially in six-figure car club. The door sills, you have the Lucid logo here, a couple coordinates of where their company is at. Honestly, I would have liked to see a light up door sill over here. This is a little bit of a cheap touch for sure. Getting inside, these seats, again, supremely comfortable, supremely well supported. Awesome adjustments, nothing hurts, everything feels good. Again, one thing I gotta mention, this car has almost 40,000 miles on it. So pretty well used car for a 22, and just the quality and fit and finish on everything is rather well. I don't have too many gripes. It holds up well. I mean, you even look at the bolstering right here. There's not really too much fade or wear on any of this. Again, you compare this to other brands that definitely start showing wear, you know, almost initially. So leather quality and just the way it's put together, it's really, really done well. They've done their homework. They glued this together rather well. Now let's jump in here, look at the finer points of what other things there are to discuss. All right, jumping in here again. You have the screen here, well positioned. No gripes with that. You have, honestly, the menu options here. Seats, massage, different themes. That's mostly lighting inside the car. Really, there's not much to it. Very easy to use. You have the specifics of the AC control. Obviously, they did the genius thing of leaving the actual AC controls. You know, you got the temperature and the fan speed. So every car with all these screens should leave this in here. They actually made this very usable. You have the volume knob right here. Awesome. Vents, great. Overall, you have the suede here. You have the big glass roof right here. So again, it is one of my gripes in this car is this big roof. While in concept, it's great and gives you this almost like an airy view of the sky, but I mean, unless you live in a very cloudy state, that sun is always beating down on you from every angle. So something to consider. The lower class trims of this car actually have a full roof. So this is an option on the higher end cars. So something to consider. It might be a deal breaker, especially in a state like Arizona, unless you cover this panel up or just tint it extra hard. You have these floating sun visors. You actually got to change the batteries out for the mirrors right here. They pull out right here. You got to stick a couple batteries when that dies. Again, suede headliner, nice and premium. You have the mirror, you know, even this piece right here covered in suede. Overall, yeah, just not a lot of gripes with the quality of this interior. You have part of the dash is leather, part of it is suede. Overall, it all holds up fairly well. You can retract the screen right here, make this go away sooner or later. You have some extra cubby space. You have space in the doors, and this space is actually very usable right here. You have your wireless phone chargers right there, a couple cup holders, and we got everything from extra water bottles, a thing right there that you can throw stuff in. So overall, for a sedan, it has fairly usable space, so no gripes with that. Steering wheel, as you can see, it's nice. It's not the best of steering wheels I've ever had, but overall it's a innovative design, very comfortable to drive and hold, especially on the bottom, because you don't have a third prong here connecting this. So anywhere you can rest your hand and just grab that, just very easy to hold. Overall, no gripes with this interior. They've done a good design, and just overall, not many things to pick on. There are a couple small build quality issues with one of the rear air vents just kind of coming off a little bit, but outside of that, it's just really no rattles. Everything is buttoned up very well. Just nice layout. This floating panel is beautiful. The CarPlay screen shows up right here, so that's integrated fairly well. Just it's simple. It's not overly complicated. It's not as gadgety as let's say sometimes a Tesla can infuse some of the electronics and gizmos in their car. So overall, they did a good job keeping this simple for just almost anybody. All right, before we head out on our drive, one other point. It's mentioned in other reviews, and just overall, it's kind of the ergonomics and just the interior space of this car. I'm sitting in here, and it all feels really tight. It's a very sports car-ish like cockpit. I mean, just even where this pillar is in relation to my head, it's very close. Because of the rake of this windshield, again, it literally feels like it's like brushing up against my head. It's sitting very low. It comes up at a very steep rake, and just this roof is not very tall. I don't know if the camera can pick this up, but even the size of this window is just very, I mean, we're talking probably 12 inches or so right here, bottom to top. So very small windows. I mean, this window, what it tries to do here with this big windshield here to give you this airy feel, but honestly, you just feel very closed in. Quite ironic for a car with the name like Air. Having said that, if you're not on the especially tall side, maybe it's not going to affect you as much. But again, give it some time to test drive this before you finally make up your mind, because it does close you in quite a bit, especially with these enormous pillars right here. All right, now let's throw this into drive, get this moving, and talk about the rest of this. This turn signal is really grating on your nerves. It's got to be one of my least favorite parts about this car as well. It's so annoying. I want to just turn it off at lights. All right, heading out. There's a couple modes here: smooth, swift, and sprint. I can't, this car rides on adaptive suspension, so that's one of the things. For 140 grand, you don't get air suspension in here. A lot of people rave that this is like, oh, it feels like jelly and butter and it's so good. It feels fine. It feels fine, but air suspension just gives you maybe a slightly just just sometimes floatier, just a more smoothed out ride. This is, it drives well, but it doesn't have that much magic in it for me. Between these modes, you can't individually adjust throttle response or steering input or any of that. So all you have is smooth, swift, and sprint. And honestly, I really can't tell the difference between any of them. This car at its max, it's 823, 26 horsepower. And honestly, like between smooth and sprint, I can't tell. Maybe there's a smidge of delivery of power coming off the line, but overall, it's just, it all feels about the same. So, you know, even in sprint mode, it's just, you really gotta get into the throttle for this car to pick up. Once you get in there, obviously it pulls well. There's no question about it. This is a fast car. It runs a 10-second quarter mile. So it's a quick car, but versus some of the rivals, again, I've spent a little bit of time in Teslas, like those cars just way more eager to go. When you're pressing the pedal, it picks up, it lunges. This just kind of smooths away from a light, unless you're really digging in there. So the impression I get out of this car is just not very eager to go. So it almost, once you get up to speed, the feeling I have is that it's always trying to pull you back, especially with the regen braking, which feel fairly high in both the high and the regular mode. This car's always kind of urging you to slow down. So you got to work, you know, fairly steady with that right leg to keep the car at speed. So again, all these electric cars are tuned just a little bit different. They give you all slightly different feel, but I feel like Tesla integrated the throttle response with the position of your foot just inherently a little bit better. Steering wise, it's fairly direct, it's fairly responsive. This car is low, it weighs 5,200 pounds. You have all this weight against the bottom, but something just feels very rubbery about this steering feel right here. It's not the best. It doesn't have that German smoothness that I'm used to or that I like. It almost feels like it's not lubricated enough back there. On top of all that, it might be because this is an early build car or one of the first cars made. There's a lot of creaks and rattles just kind of like off the steering wheel. Like when you start twisting it, I don't know if you guys hear much of that at all, but it's fairly annoying when you're interacting with this steering wheel. Other points of contention, I don't really like this shift turn signal or stalk. The sound is annoying, the feeling is rather cheap. Other build quality issues, so there's a door seal right there that's letting in quite a bit of wind noise through it. Just again, minor quibbles. Outside of that, there's really not too many rattles in the seat, in the rest of this build quality. So I'm sure by 2025, Lucid has probably ironed out a lot of these things, okay? So overall, for like a first production run, this is fairly well made and built. I'm sure some of these things could also be probably addressed under warranty if one desires, but just again, there's a couple things left to be desired on this. The regen works well, the acceleration works well. Overall, no quibbles or issues with almost any of that. But again, I got to drive this for quite a bit. It's missing this like sort of connectedness to the car. I'm driving this, it doesn't really feel that special or just that premium of a product driving this. Does it feel like a good car? It does, but it's almost missing some magical element or special touch that a lot of reviewers allude you to think that this car would have. So again, compare the alternatives. Take a look at the Tesla, take a look at some of the Mercedes products. Just, this is still a work in progress, even though it is a pretty good product. All right, another very important point where this Lucid shines and what the engineers have done very well is give it an incredible range. On paper, they say it can go like something like 500 miles to a charge. Real world use, everything I've seen is about 400 miles, which is still incredible. I mean, look, most people will probably still end up plugging this in nightly, if not every other night, but where this will truly shine is on a road trip. If you're planning on taking this state to state or venturing out of your state, that is definitely mega helpful, although you might have a little bit of a harder time finding the charge stations for the Lucid versus all the Tesla infrastructure available until the time you can charge both at whichever either. So again, these cars excel at that. If that is a concern to you, if you plan on taking this out of state on trips or just out of your ordinary day-to-day driving, definitely very, very awesome how much they integrated that. Again, I found that feature very useful as well in my driving. This required very, very little charging during the time that I had it. So overall, very awesome. Almost makes you put that the whole thing that it's electric and the cons of that aside a little bit further, given the extra range of this car. All right, guys. We're gonna get into the 3 likes and 3 dislikes. Like number 1 is the interior. I like it, it's modern. I like the use of materials in here. I'm a big Alcantara fan. I love the leather. The subtle wood touches are awesome. This panel right here and the fact that it retracts give you a little extra space. They've done a good job. They've thought out many of these touches, especially these AC controls. The physical AC controls are a clutch. I do like this interior, even with some of the shortcomings I mentioned previously. Number 2 like is the installation of this car. Sitting at lights or even driving, this is dual pane windows all around. They've done a really, really good job keeping this car very hush and quiet. Even riding on these 21-inch wheels, you don't hear much road noise or tire noise at all cruising this. This is a serene driving experience on almost any surface, any pavement. I've taken this on the freeway. It does honestly even better sitting and driving this on the freeway than it does around town. It could definitely be an awesome commute car if that's what you're using it for. So they've insulated and they hushed this car down to a marvelous level, as an electric car should be. And number 3 like is I like the brand. I like the startup. I like the underdog principles of them trying to tackle some big name, very established brands. I mean, you're going up not only against Tesla, but you're going up against just juggernauts in the game. I mean, you're talking BMWs, the Mercedes. They're aiming this to be a very premium 6-figure product. And even though there's still touches that they gotta iron out, I can see the premise and where they're trying to go, especially as they're revving up to put out their SUV starting early next year. So overall, just very awesome premise. I'm rooting for this company. I really hope they keep improving in their products and it doesn't go dying off like some other brands. All right, guys, getting into the 3 dislikes. Number 1 is sort of the interior space and the ergonomics, the claustrophobia I feel sitting in here. All these pillars from this one to this one, rearward visibility is fairly terrible in here. So it does kind of congest me inside the car. So that's my number 1 dislike. Number 2 dislike is family use in this car. Even though it's made to be a practical car, it has this shape of a sedan, it's all the finer small points such as that slope roof line and the trunk that just don't make it a very usable family car, especially with little kids. And number 3 dislike is the overall lack of emotion or connectedness to this car. While all the individual pieces of this feel pretty great, it has good acceleration, it has good sound insulation, and maybe it's just it just is a decent day-to-day car, but there's nothing inherently in this car that makes me wake up in the morning and want to just kind of grab the keys and just jump in here for a drive. So it does a good job of transport, which is what it intends to do, but it leaves me looking or searching for more, especially as a car enthusiast. All right, we're in a, I imagine that this is a brand new Model S long range. First thing I noticed is the seats are more comfortable in the Lucid. Something about the rake of this top panel right here going towards your knees just sticks up a little bit more. But overall, it feels good. It's comfy. Overall, the ergonomics are fairly well laid out. Again, just the things you notice is you're just way more in tune and you're one with the car here. The Lucid, I just felt way more disconnected on every front. So the gas pedal, the steering, just all the inputs, the car responded to them, but just that link between what your body does and the way the car responds was not attuned in the Lucid. Here is just, everything is just kind of more immediate, more punchy, more grabby. It feels like just a little bit extra engineering and thought went into almost every input. So I do enjoy that. It feels good. Everything feels honestly a little bit more natural when you lift off the gas pedal, when you give it gas, even that fine-tuning of gas input to how the car moves, how it lunges forward is just a little bit more natural. Just, it's not as fake of just, you know, hey, we're gonna make a car, it's gonna move, you know, it's gonna power up the engines and make the wheels spin. Here it's just, it has a little bit more of a human mind connection when you drive it. So really enjoyable. Fit and finish is just as good. Not a single rattle. Very, very isolated, nice materials. Again, I'd probably give a couple extra points to the Lucid, but there's nothing inherently bad about this. It's got the wood, it's got pleather, leather, whatever this is. The screen looks good. Just overall, it's spacious. You know, it still has that big roof over here. Overall, it feels good. The suspension, even though it's air suspension, is probably, I don't know, maybe 5 to 10% more firm or more planted on the road. It's not bumpy or jaggedy. It's just just a slight hair more firm than the Lucid. But overall, very similar comparison to the Lucid spring suspension. Again, this probably feels, just the overall driving experience, 5 to 10% more sporty than what I immediately felt in the Lucid. Overall, still great, still very refined. Just in my short drive, I have no complaints with how this drives or what it makes you feel. All right, so wrapping up this review, I have just mixed emotions about this car in general. There's some pros. It's an innovative car. I like where Lucid is going. I like the fact they're adding an SUV soon. That'll definitely provide more usability. But again, it kind of leaves me on this middle ground. What they try to do is fuse the sport and the luxury aspect into one, but they don't. It feels like they're not fully excelling or succeeding maybe that far in either of these categories. While it does drive fairly well, certain luxury brands give you more of the luxury feeling. And as far as the sports side, this car doesn't really, I feel like it doesn't even need the 800 horsepower or whatever it offers. This would probably do just as well in 95% of the cases with 400, with half of this. So the entry-level car might just fit very, very well. This car does not want to be pushed. It doesn't feel like it wants to be pushed. It almost, driving this, you forget it has that capability of being a little bit quicker. And anytime you push this, this car almost looks at you and asks you, well, what's the point? Why are you doing it? So with that said, this was a cool experience. I was waiting a long time to get my hands on one. Once they get this SUV out, I'm actually very excited to see how that stacks up and what they do with that. But overall, I like it. I like the innovation. I like the technology. I like where this world is going, even though Lucid still has a little bit of work to do. Again, thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you for being our supporters. And as always, stay tuned for more. We'll be right back with more desert road content.